I am Jeff Ado. This is Lunacy, where we discern the sacred from the insane and admit that whether we like it or not, we are all profoundly affected by the cycles of the moon. How? Nice. That was good. Beautiful. My guest today is my good friend, Nathan Carden. He is an Emmy-nominated production designer. He is an avid hiker. He is an outdoorsman. He is a seeker and somebody who's avidly enthused about bettering himself and the lives of those around him. He's a warm heart and he's a super good dude. Nathan, welcome to Lunacy.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to just kick off with kind of the reason d'etre, the raison d'etre of you being on the podcast today. You just did this incredible hiking experiment where you traveled a very long distance by yourself. Tell us a little bit about that. What's the stat on it?
So I am a single crown through hiker now. And what a crown means is that there in the United States, there's 3 crowns you can get. There are 3 very long through hikes you can do. I did the Pacific Crest Trail, which is from the Mexican border to the Canadian border, and it's 2,653 miles. And I did it starting April 1st of this year and just completed it like 2 weeks ago.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing.
It seems unbelievable. And it is even to myself. Like, I was like, did I do that? Like, did I walk from Mexico to Canada, essentially across the United States, the long way, like the hard way through the mountains? Yeah. And I did that. It seems weird. Doesn't seem like something that was like in my like predictable future, but I did it. It was my gift. It was my gift to myself. I just turned 40. So
okay.
All right, let's go on a hike.
Yeah, a really long hike. So first of all, let's say why. So it's partially because you turned 40. Like what were the other reasons that you embarked upon such a voyage?
Timing wise, 40 just kind of made sense for me, given when I started planning it. But I'll give you the runaround. So a couple years ago, I noticed that this guy that I knew from the gym was on this hike. And this is in probably 2019, I think, the summer of 2019. And I remember just watching him do this. And I know this human being. He worked at Goldman Sachs, and I saw him at the gym every day. And I was just like, what is he doing? Like, how was he affording this? Like, how did he get that much time off? Because to me, it was just like this unbelievable like ultimate vacation. I would like to go and see these places, but I was just like, yeah, right. I could never, ever do that kind of thing. And as you and I know, we're in a community that we don't speak loudly about things that aren't possible for ourselves. We do speak avidly about that anything you want for yourself in your life is available and possible. And it was just such a, but not for me. Yeah, right. I could never do that because at that point in time, you know, I am an Emmy-nominated production designer, but I have lived paycheck to paycheck since I was 14 years old. You know, like I am very good at spending all the money that I have. And so whether or not that was a big paycheck or a little paycheck, money runs through my hands like a sieve. And so I was like, not gonna happen for me. And then, I was doing really well in my career. And when 2020 rolled around, I remember I had my whole year booked out. It was going to be my most lucrative year ever. I was really excited about it. And then, everything ground to a halt. We go into lockdown, and within a matter of days in the month of March, my calendar was just wiped out. Like, we're not doing that. This is canceled. Like, maybe we'll reschedule it. I don't know. But I went from potential earning a huge number to earning nothing. And so what I did in 2020 is that I reinvented myself as a furniture builder.
Oh.
And it was like, in the world of anything's possible, I was like, I'm going to take a gamble. Like, my story could either be I waited it out and spent whatever savings I had and withered away, or I put all my money on myself, and I am extremely confident. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to start another business. And I sold all my stocks. I drained my accounts. I maxed out my credit cards, and I started a furniture company. And
Wow.
it was very much
Is
like
it custom furniture, or was it like just
Yep, custom, extremely high-end furniture. Like, and I had never done it ever. I mean, I'm good at building things, but I had never worked with hardwoods. I had never done Japanese joinery. I had never done any of this stuff. I was just
Me
like,
too.
I'm going to figure this stuff out as I go. And I, through like sharing what I was up to with other people, I got clients. And within 9 months, that business was paying all my bills.
Wow.
And I had a studio, and it was full of tools, and I was really proud of myself. And then I was like, okay, so I did that. And then the world kind of churned and was like, okay, well, then I had like a really good year. But I was like, I'm going to be in debt because of this forever, because as much as I was paying off the minimums on these, but I was in $50,000 in credit card debt. And I was just like, I'm now stuck with this. And so in the world of anything's possible, I remember thinking, I was like, well, what else is there? And I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna do the Pacific Crest Trail hike in 2023, the year I turned 40. And in order to do that, to get there, I'm gonna have to get myself out of debt, and then I'm also gonna need to sock away enough money to put my life on ice. So it was like, I need to make an additional $100,000 in 2 years on top of everything else that I'm normally earning. And so that became the new thing that I was sharing. And I paid it all the debt in like 9 months. My other company, like as a
through
designer,
the furniture business.
Through the furniture business. And then that turned into a new possibility, which was I did a build out for an entire store on Melrose, so like I'm now an interior designing but designing custom furniture, but also not making it myself. I just expanded to be able to do this. And so the biggest win for me, like that possibility fulfilled of like being free of all of this and getting to go and do something as crazy as like, I'm going to go hiking for 6 months. The biggest hurdle was getting myself available to set foot on the trail. I was like, physically I could do it. I could do it yesterday. And I was like, but it will never be something that's available to me because I didn't grow up with rich parents. I don't have a rich partner. I'm self-made. And I was like, well, that's bullshit. I'm going to be able to afford this. And I did. And so it was like, it was a lot of hard work, and it was a lot of sharing about like what I'm up to and being honest. Like, I'm like, that's how I got this big contract for the store on Melrose, is that I was just sharing what I was up to. Like, I'm getting myself out of debt, and I'm like, I want to do bigger things. And I don't want to be a single point of failure for my, like income revenue stream. I want to be like bigger. I want to grow an empire. And so I did that. And then the real hurdle was, okay, now you have to walk to 2,600 miles. And that was hard. There were times that it was hard, but it was getting myself to that point was the big win, and like the expansion of who I get to be and who I am. And then I had the hike. So the hike was, a bonus. Like, let's spend 6 months with your, walking and letting your brain wander and creating new futures and like processing trauma. And like, there's a lot there. And I'm actually writing a book about it, which I have notes, but I haven't started. But I'm writing a book called The Devil on Your Back. Cool. And it was like essentially the whole journey from me start to finish, like, so 2 years prior to completion and all the in between, and incorporating a lot of like other like life lessons and things that I've picked up on the way, and in terms of my transformational journey and the things that I'd like to share.
Cool. Well, that's great. Good talk, man. Thanks for coming on the show. See ya.
Okay, great. Bye.
Boring. Just kidding. No, that's absolutely fascinating. Great. Well, I want to start off with, there's so much to pick through there, and I'm excited to get into it. the first thing I want to start off with is a little bit of how we know each other. So we know each other through Landmark Education, which I've talked about on this program quite a bit. It's a personal development organization. It's all about transformation, about integrity. It's about being your word. It's about seeing beyond yourself as being a victim, to you being the author of your own destiny, but in a very visceral, real, no bullshit. This is it. You're responsible. I'm responsible 100% for my life. And if I look at my life from that lens, what does that allow? How does that affect me and who I am in the world and how I affect people and like that? And so this is a beautiful story of like triumph for you, because it's clearly, even in the setup here, you had so many obstacles to get through. 2020 happened. And so you experienced shutdown. So everything that you had known previously in your career as a production designer, Emmy nominated, future Emmy award winning. I'm saying it right here.
That's right.
All right. Just said it. All right.
Okay.
Production designer, that shut down. None of that business is available to you. You reinvented yourself as a furniture maker. And I mean, that's like really amazing. So maybe before we get into the actual hike of it, which I really want to get into, is like, because you talk about, you kept sharing about your possibility and telling people about it. And then that gave you opportunities, for people who like say haven't done Landmark or just listening or whatever, dial us into a little bit, like how did the mindset that you have really flourish and allow you to do what you did?
Okay. Well, the long and short of it is the secret to my success was being in communication. And so I am a Landmark mega graduate. So there's people that do the Landmark Forum. There are people that go through the curriculum for a living. And then there are people like me that ended up volunteering 40, 50 hours of my time a week and coached programs and trained to be a leader and took every course available, and really soaked up as much of that community that I could over the course of about 10 years.
Right.
So the economy crumbles. And at that point in time, I am coaching, one of the more tougher and longer programs, the Introduction Leaders program. I'm in all of this, and instinctually, none of that training kicked in when COVID happened. It just wasn't I was fraught at best, because I remember I was filming this huge campaign for Volkswagen, and it was like a huge moneymaker for me. It was like a long 3-week shoot. It was like the release of multiple cars. It was very exciting. We got 1 day of shooting. The next day, we find out that the German people from Volkswagen had flown home in the middle of the night. Our shoot was shut down. This is Friday the 13th.
The Germans flew home in the middle of the night.
Where's the Germans?
Where's the Germans? What, you leaving because of a little germ?
Yeah. And so I remember I had to go back out to Malibu to go clean up some of this mess the next day. And I was just I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. I'm somebody who earns a lot and spends a lot, and I just was not ready for a global shutdown. Surprise. But I got in communication with a leader who I'm in love with. She leads the wisdom course. It's Jen Swarovski.
Oh,
and
Love
and
Jen.
she's so it was the perfect person to call. It was just I was at a loss, and I was who can I call right now? Who can I be in communication with? And she was I'm going to tell you something, and it might be really radical. And this is from the introduction to the Landmark Forum. I led introductions for years to hundreds and hundreds of people. And we say this as, in the introduction, that it's the future you're living into that gives you who you're being in the present. And she was like, what? And I was and that hit me I'd never heard it before.
Yeah.
I'd said it thousands of times.
Sure.
And I was like, wait, what? And she's like, what is the future that you're living into? And I was like, well, doom and gloom and poverty and all this. And she's like, create something else. You're a graduate. You can do anything. You can create any future that you want. And it does take something to create a future from nothing. And that's the work that you do at Landmark, which is to get yourself to nothing. But I wasn't at nothing. I was in a reaction, obviously. But you can get yourself back there. And I was like, what is the future that I want to create? And that's what I shared. So I wasn't sharing I don't have any money, guys. It was I'm creating this business. I'm if I can say anything, Like I actually have control of the words that come out of my mouth, which I do. What do I want to create, and who do I want to be as a conversation on this planet? And that's all we are. Like you're nothing, and then what you're saying about it.
Right.
And so I was like, I'm starting a new business. It's how I got my Emmy nomination. I like literally was a possibility when I was in the wisdom course. I was like, I'm going to get nominated for an Emmy. I don't know what show it is or like for what, but that's what's happening. So that happened. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, I get to be in control of who I am as a conversation. And the conversation I was about then was, I'm going to start this business. And then I shifted the conversation to the next possibility, which was, I'm going to hike the PCT.
Yeah.
And then it was like, and then I'm going to finish the PCT. And now it's like, I'm starting a retail store and a lifestyle brand. And that's like the new thing that I'm doing. I'm sure there's room for that later, the pitch of what's next. But, you know, it's like, I got to design lots of new futures on the trail and just let my mind wander. Like, what is it that I want to be doing? And so we'll get more into that, I'm sure. But
yeah, so that's really beautiful.
I think your question.
You did. No, you nailed it. That's
okay,
great.
Good.
I mean, really, you were in communication about fulfilling your dreams and what it was that you really wanted to create. And you painted the picture and you knew what that was and you said it to people. And I think what's distinct about that is, like, first of all, I mean, look, if people have done Landmark, that's great. If you want to do Landmark, that's great too. You know, I don't think you have to do Landmark. It's totally up to you. It's your choice, right?
Yep.
But I think like one of the best takeaways from that work and what you just described and emulated in your life is, like, you weren't walking around complaining. And I mean, just being honest, I think, you know, most of us go through a lot of our lives complaining about what's wrong with the world and what's going on and that kind of thing, myself included. You know what I mean? I there was a huge period where I was a victim and just wallowing in, you know, what the world has done to me. But when you're just doing that, when you're just concerned about being a victim and you're in that mindset and you get stuck in that trap, because it is a trap. It's not like you're bad for being a victim. We just get stuck there. It's like a normal thing that happens. It's falling in a pothole, you know, that just keeps getting deeper.
And I think it's also responsible that, you know, I don't think that you mean like you are an actual victim. You're at the effect of life and circumstance.
That's right. I'm not talking about you got shot or something like that, or you got robbed or something. I mean, like, being a victim in terms of your outlook, you know, feeling like there's nothing that I can do in my life. And for sure, I know I've been there. I'm sure you've been there as well. And also, given the circumstances that you were facing, it would have been extremely easy for you to just go there. Man, my whole career just shut down. You know, but you didn't go there. You went to, what can I create? What am I creating now? And instead of being committed to the story of what's wrong and how sad, you really came from, what can I create and who do I want to be? And what's the future that I want to live into, which is something that all of us can do at any point. So that's really beautiful.
Yeah. And all it takes is, you know, it's a willingness to be, you know, we say this at Landmark, is that to be cause in the matter. You know, I'm saying, like, because the economy crumbled or because there's a global pandemic, I'm going to be poor. Well, that is one possible interpretation of the things that I can see from my point of view. Yeah. And the smartest thing I've gathered is that my point of view is limited. So get in communication, because you can't create anything new by rattling through what the things that happened to you in the past. The only way you can create something new is that if you add in new elements. So get on the phone with somebody else, and rather than looking for, you know, agreement of like, yeah, your life is fucked. Like, get on the phone with somebody who's not going to put up with like that you have one point of view from where you're standing, and help them, or have them help you shift it. Yeah. And that's all that happened, was like I was open to hearing something else that could be empowering. I was looking for something that was empowering. And all that Jen did was help me shift what I was looking at.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's really great. Cool. So let's get into a little bit of the trail. So you arrange your life, you set up all this to build this beautiful dream. You create a new business, You expand that business so that you can get out of debt, which is also amazing. I'm sure people would love to hear about that, but let's not get too deep into the weeds there. Essentially, you just expanded your business and looked for ways that you could create more income, which you did, right?
Precisely. Yeah. I mean, this is the what you're pointing to right now is the like just stupidly simple like advice that will work if you just take it by like trying not to like fray the edges of it. It's like, so what did you do? Like, well, I just grew my audience and looked for new opportunities. What?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
well, how did I do that? Well, I shared what I was up to, what I was creating, and the opportunities, I found them, but it's like I just took action after action after action,
Right.
and then ended up with what I wanted, which was I paid off my debt, and then I also was able to sock away enough money to put my life on ice. Which you could do it multiple ways. You can sell everything you own. I like my TV, and I like my truck, and I like all my tools and stuff. And I was like, well, I want to come back to that, and so that's what I did.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's great. So you set all of that stuff up, and then you packed away. You kind of probably talked to your family and friends and partner and everything, and set it up like, hey, I'm going to be going on this crazy journey. They're all well aware of what you're planning to do, so they're not freaked out about it. Maybe they were, but anyway, you're doing it.
Yeah.
And then you get your ass to Mexico with a backpack. Take us in. Like, what are we carrying on our back, Carden? What do we got? Shoes?
So you got a pair of shoes. You're wearing your one outfit, and then you may have like some, but for the most part, the Pacific Crest Trail is not your average backpacking trip. It is a marathon, and so you're really looking at like what am I going to need, and if I'm by need meaning that I'm going to use it every day, or I need it to survive some kind of specific thing. So it's like there are times when, you're not every day you're going to wear a pair of gloves, but when you do need them, you really need them. So you make room for those. But my pack was, I think my base weight, it was 11 pounds. So I have a futuristic tent, and I've got a very expensive sleeping bag and all this other stuff.
Your pack was 11 pounds?
11 pounds without food or water in it. So that's like a almost ultralight. Okay. There are people that have far less, and there are people that have way more. It just depends on what you're willing to carry every day, and what luxury items you feel like you do need. There are luxury items that you don't need. I have 2 pillows. I like to sleep with 2 pillows. I sleep a lot better with them. So I have 2 inflatable pillows. It's dumb. But so yeah, you've got all that stuff, and then you get to the Mexican border. I took a shuttle from San Diego.
What was your pack weight when it was full?
Fully loaded, I think, like coming out of like, so you resupply in town, so you get like enough 5 days of food, and then you've got enough water to get yourself to the next water source. So generally it's between, I don't know, 2 and at the worst 6 liters of water, which is 2 pounds a liter. So I think I was somewhere around like fully loaded 35 pounds.
Wow.
Which is not that heavy. Like backpacks used to be much heavier, and like people that have been in the military, those packs are 75 pounds. This is an ultralight pack meant for you're doing long distances, and then towards the middle and the end of the hike, you're hiking 30 miles a day. So anything you can get, you're like, get rid of this. Like, I don't want to see it. Like, this thing's 30. Like anything that's like ounces, just get rid of it.
Okay, so sorry. So wow, that's incredible. So we back on the shuttle. You take the shuttle down to Mexico from San Diego or something? Or?
From San Diego, yeah. So I took the train from my house. I said goodbye to my partner in this room. I got on the train, went down to San Diego, got on a shuttle the next day, and get dropped off at the southern terminus, which is this little monument that is right next to Trump's wall, the fence.
Oh.
So you're like, you put your hand in Mexico, and you're like, all right, I did that. And then you turn around and you're like, all right, I'm walking. Here we go. And towards the beginning, I was only doing like 10 to 12 mile days for like probably a week or 2, and then 13 miles, and then 14 miles, and then gradually increasing as my body is adjusting to doing that kind of a workout. you're walking all day long.
Yeah. And is that kind of
and it gets
normal?
easier.
That's kind of the pace that most people do it at. They start
Most
out slow
people,
and then build it.
most people are not prepared to do anything more than that, and your body will protest. Like the first night putting up my tent, I couldn't raise my arms. I was like, oh, like because my traps, like from having a backpack on, were just very sore. And then,
Sure.
you just you begin to get more confident, and you begin to push miles, and then your first 15-mile day feels crazy, and then like doing a 20 in a day feels crazy, and then you do a 22 and 24 and keep going, and then by the end you're a 26-mile day is about the average.
Wow.
You're hiking 3 miles an hour for 10 hours.
Wow.
Every day.
And
it becomes a job.
Yeah. And so are you, I want to keep getting into logistics because I do like a little bit of backcountry camping. I took my nephews recently up here and it was super, super easy, lightweight, but anyway, it was fun. So you've got, I would imagine that are you eating dehydrated meals mostly?
I started not doing that. So I started doing like the normal, like you've got a couple of options for dinners. Okay. You've got ramen. People eat a lot of like mashed potatoes and like dehydrated like nor sides and things like that.
Nor
towards
sides?
the end.
What's nor sides?
Nor sides, it's like if you go into like the noodle aisle, there's like all these packets of like there's like side dishes and they're all dehydrated. So it's like cheesy broccoli rice and it's in a packet, like a like a paper packet. So it's like, but it's not like your backpacker meal that you would get at REI.
Right.
People eat a lot of those. They're very inexpensive. They're high in calories. They're disgusting. I ate one. And then towards the end of my hike, I was like, get me like the backpacker's pantry, Mountain House. Yeah. Like it's just so much more enjoyable to have something has them different, like, but they're expensive and they're bulky. And, for a lot of people, it's not really something that they can afford to do every single day.
Right.
I could, so I did.
Yeah. You set yourself up that way.
But yeah, and it was also, I'm not your average hiker. A lot of people are just out of college. I have a career in a house and saved up enough money to, I wanted to enjoy myself, and eating ramen every single night. Ramen's great, but I don't want to do it every night. That sounds awful.
Is it? I mean, come on. It's not that good. All right. It's okay.
Every
once
single
a month,
night.
I feel like every night, fucking ramen. No, I couldn't do it.
Yeah. And then you're getting gross. There's like people eat these things called ramen bombs, which is like a packet of ramen crushed up. You make that and then you put mashed potatoes in that. So it's just like 1,000 calories of like carb mush. It's really gross. That's not for me either.
Good.
But your body like doesn't care what it's eating. It's like, just get me food. So it's the antithesis of how I normally exist, which is I watch everything that I eat is, oh, you want a bag of chips? Eat the whole bag of chips. So because it's like too bulky. So, you're eating 4,000, 5,000 calories a day if you can carry it and you're still hungry. I lost 50 pounds in 6 months.
Yeah, I was going to say, the last time I saw you, you were, not whatever. You were just
figure.
You were a fuller figure. Yes. You were a softer human. And now you just look like it's way super trim. Again, no, I don't care what people look like. Okay. That's not what this is about. Yeah. But you look like you definitely lost a ton of weight and you're in way better shape. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then so you had I would imagine you had a water filter with you as well.
Yep.
And you had a camp stove, or you had one of those, what are those things that heat things in 90 seconds? I just bought one. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I don't know. I had a stove. There is this thing called a crotch pot, which is like,
that sounds gross.
I forget who makes it, but you put your food like in your junk, and like you having it in having I don't know, a meal next to your privates all day heats them up, and then you eat it. And I was like, that's not for me. I've never seen anybody carry it, but it is a product.
That's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
Especially when you haven't showered in 6 days.
Oh my God.
I don't want my food next to my crotch.
God. descent it. I mean, what? I don't know. All right,
I don't
I'm
know.
editing that part out because that's disgusting.
Okay.
People are gonna be like, gross. He just talked about cooking stuff with his nuts.
That's right.
But he didn't do it, people. All right,
No,
there
I
was a
didn't do it.
choice, and he
No.
made the right choice. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
non-crotch pot choice.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad we got through that. So, okay, cool. Yeah. So you had a camp stove, like a little Coleman or something with gas that was powered.
I had a Soto Windmaster, which is, everything I own is like it's all in the ounces range. So
Yeah.
there's entry level backpacking stuff, and then there's the ultralight world that all these like little cottage industries, and you can spend a lot of money on backpacking gear, and people do.
Yeah.
But you want something that's gonna. I mean, I used it. I think I slept outside 120 something nights this year, so I got my
Wow.
money's worth.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
And and then for like, so you would have a big dinner for breakfast and lunch. What were you? Were you just snacking on granola?
I'm somebody who went into the hike thinking that I would like make breakfast and then clean up camp and all that. No, you just want to like get going. So you pack up as quickly as you can. And then I ate a lot of Pop-Tarts. I love Pop-Tarts. They're super tasty. So cold Pop-Tarts, and then a succession of bars and things like that. Sometimes I would stop to eat lunch. Other times you just keep moving, just because you begin to need to walk. I mean, because the weather's against you on both ends. It's either going to get really hot, or it's going to you're going to get caught in storms, or it's going to start snowing again. So it's a lot of mileage, and you think you very quickly get present to, okay, I got to walk faster than this. And cutting out breaks and eating while you're walking is one of the easiest ways to do that. So initially I thought that I could take an hour break for lunch, and then I just kind of cut that out, and you just eat whatever trail mix, and people eat candy bars a lot. I love Nature's Valley, anything they put out. I'm like a sweet, salty, crunchy kind of person, so I ate a lot of granola bars.
Yeah, nice. That's what I was think of you as a sweet, salty, crunchy person.
That's right.
What do you think of Nathan? Sweet, salty, and crunchy.
Pretty much. Yeah. Some people would not say sweet, salty, and crunchy for sure. Sometimes very spicy, sour and spicy, and all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, human.
Yeah.
Great. So let's talk about what was the overall experience like for you? Like just being on the hike, like what, you've kind of touched on a little bit that you really had some explorations of what your future would be and letting your mind wander. I know for me personally, whenever I've only done 3 to 5 day trips by myself, but in college I used to do that all the time or frequently. And it was super beneficial because I just felt like I would hear songs in my head that I had heard and advertisements and these weird things. And then after a few days, that would just drop away and I would just be present. And then I was like a different world. And then I felt like I was more in touch with nature and spirituality. And, that's kind of what I was going for. So I can relate on sort of a micro scale, but I'm just wondering, for you, a little more specifically, what was the marvel of the hike for you? What were the high points in terms of experience?
There were a lot of times though, because it is such a marathon hike. There were days that I felt like I wasn't being mindful, and I was like, wow, I just hiked, all day, 20 something miles, and I didn't get anything. And so,
right.
And now
you didn't even see the trees.
You don't see the trees, or you spent an hour being irritated. There was a lot of stuff that came up for me that I was sort of shocked as as being as transformed as I am, that things still came up that I was like, golly, that, how long has that been back there? There was one in particular that I love sharing about, is that I got fired when I was 22, 23 years old from this job that I'd worked at for 3 days. And I have still can replay the whole conversation where I got fired. But it was a nice thing to take out, examine, and actually deal with it in a way. I'm like, am I going to get complete on this? Probably not. It's just back there, and I just put it back. and it's fine. But I was able to actually kind of like fall in love with a lot of like the idiosyncratic things about myself that are just like who I am. So I think like there was a lot of like, why am I this way? The kind of stuff that like, like I'm a sassy gay dude, and like I'm, people have, I've always been somebody who's been like, has always been known as like being arrogant. And I fell in love with that on the trail. I was like, that's just who the fuck I am. Like, and because I work my ass off. Like I like have always put myself like that I want to be in front of people. I want to be impressive. And it's not a bad thing, especially if I'm your employee or like I'm the person you hired. Like I want you to like it. And so like and I know for a fact that what I do is good. And so like I like was able to like really come to terms with like pieces of my personality that I up until this point have been quote unquote untransformed or unsavory or people don't like them. I sort of got to like be the person of like, this is just who I am. And I got really like, I fell in love with who I am.
That's
on
amazing.
the trail. And that was like not really a high point. That was like a slow burn of just really like coming to terms with like, yeah, it's okay that, I am this way and then I don't have to be, but it's not a bad thing that I am the person that I wound up being.
Yeah.
And it's because like most of the days on the trail were not this like, splendor of like nature. It was like you're walking
hummingbirds following you along with butterflies.
Yeah, there were those, but like, for the most part, you're like sweating your ass off. Like, yeah, you're
hiking uphill. Like, fucking, when is the next switchback? Where's the top of the hill? What are we doing? Right, like that.
And sometimes there were great views, and other times, there are hundreds of miles of the trail that are unsavory. They're just not great, or they're burned out. California has had so many huge fires over the years that there's miles and miles of just like burnt dead forest, and you're like, well, what am I going to think about now? Like, because I'm not just like, wow, like I'm in Yosemite. Like, you're only there for a couple of days. So it wasn't it was coming to terms with like, this is why the book I'm writing is called The Devil on Your Back. It's like you're carrying all this crap with you, and like sometimes you can throw it away, sometimes you can get rid of it, but for the most part, it is who you are. You are who you are. And if you can like really process like, okay, like, if I'm going to hang on to this, I'm going to hang on to it. And I got nothing wrong with it. There's nothing bad or wrong about the person that I wound up being. And I was able to spend enough time with myself to like really get to know myself. And it was also great to like get out of Los Angeles and to get out of, the rat race and actually get to meet people that, I really I fell in love with who I am, because I get that like I'm such an anomaly compared to everyone that lives in other parts of the country. It's like there's things that like I don't necessarily share. Like I work on Mariah Carey's Christmas stuff every year, and that's really cool. But it's like not something that I normally talk about, because it's like, I don't know, like it just like wait, that's who I wound up being. I'm like so good at Christmas that I get to go in and like do like little fiddly things in Mariah Carey's house. Like, cool. I gained a lot of perspective because it was the first time in my life that I didn't have my nose down, like your head down, just like working. You got to get out, and you're like, wow, like the further I got away from my life, the more I was like, I really like my life. Like as a whole, like, where I live, who my partner is, the kind of relationship I have, like what I've done with my time on Earth, I got really proud of who I am. And I think that was the biggest gift out of this whole thing. I was looking for something that was so impressive, like undeniably impressive. Like, you hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, like very few people do this, but I like, once I finished, I was like, I don't need to do that. I didn't need this. I could have been this proud of myself before. So it's like in retrospect and like as a reflection of like what I wanted, I saw that I already had. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. It's really beautiful. I'm hearing so much of the theme of the trip for you was really like about acceptance and self-love, and just like accepting all the little things about yourself that maybe you had heard judgments from out of others' mouths or whatever, or had that interpretation or, assumption. that somebody else judged you for being sassy, gay, arrogant, whatever it is, and yet like you really looked at yourself and said, no, this is who I am, and I totally accept myself, and I really love myself. I love what I'm creating. So it was like, it's interesting. I this has been coming up quite a bit in my podcast recently, is like this idea of like celebrating our own victories and celebrating who we are and what we've accomplished. I just did a concert on Sunday and I performed 25 songs, and I'm going back through looking through the footage now, and usually I'm critical of myself and I'm like, yeah, you could have done that better and this better, but it was really good. Like particularly my voice and my connection to the song, like the performance was great. Like I'll stand on that, but like the part of me that as a performer that doesn't want to accept that it's ever good enough is always there, like that part is, so I've, part of what I'm using to kind of heal that is just acceptance. No, this is really good. And you can stand on how good you are at what you do. And you just proved to yourself that you could do it. And you watched it yourself and thought that was really great performance. It sounds like a lot of what your experience in the mountains was really like just coming to terms with accepting who you are, how you are, and what you've done, and being proud of who you are. It's really, really amazing. I'm wondering, was there any particular key? Because you mentioned, aside from acceptance, you mentioned loving yourself. Was that just something that you feel like, kind of evolved just out of being in nature and being totally grounded? Was it like a process of the hike itself, or was it also something that you made a choice about during the hike?
It was definitely a choice. And it was not easy to come by, in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think it really did take it took the rigor of, okay, I'm hiking every single day for me to get to a raw enough point to actually take the advice that I was given 100 times. In the hiking community, there's an idiom called hike your own hike. And sometimes it's thrown around like a Southern bless your heart, like, okay, well, why don't you hike your own hike and get the fuck off my back type thing?
Mm-hmm.
Or but it became this big thing because it does make sense. Like, and there were
bless
times
your heart.
when, yeah, but there's also times when I was like, I'm having a miserable time out here. It's because I'm not hiking my own hike. I'm trying to impress someone, or I'm trying to keep up with somebody who has a different schedule than me, or I am not giving into like my own needs. Like there were times when, I was hiking with people that I are near and dear to me, and they had a different schedule than I did. And I was getting resentful towards the choices that I didn't think that I was making in order to keep up with them, versus like, you guys go ahead. I'm going to hike my own hike here, and I'm going to sit on this rock and just take in this view. Or I'm going to keep going because I want to do that. It's like, it really is like when it's you physically taking the steps forward, because nobody else is going to carry that backpack for you. Nobody else is going to like get your ass up and down that hill. Nobody's going to filter the water for you. Like no one's going to do anything for you. It's you. So, and the thing that was always in the back of my head is like, I saved up for 2 years to do this. Mm-hmm. Like I created a whole new business model. I did so much to be able to be out here. And if I'm not just hiking my own goddamn hike, like then why am I out here?
Right.
And that, like, to me is like such a translation into real life of like, this is like this whole new business idea, like this is my life and I get to spend it however I want. So what do I want to do? Yeah. I could do anything. I could quit my job. I could sell everything, or I can double down and go and like continue to work as a production designer in the film industry. I could do anything. And I don't really care what anybody else asks to do, because they're not the one. No one else is paying. No one's paying my bills. Nobody's working, like doing what I do for, like, it's like, I really did get control that like, this is my time on earth and no one's going to do anything for me. Yes, there are people that are helping and contributing, and I'm grateful for like, the sweet things that my partner does, or like the sweet things that my mom does for me and all that. But it's like, at the end of the day, I'm the one walking, like I'm the one traveling through this life. And so I'm going to make choices that honor this is my time. It's the only time. Sorry, I really got present to like the ephemeral, I guess, if that's the right use of that word. I think it is. Sounds smart. Um,
Yeah.
it's like, this is it. Most of the time I was like, I'm never coming back to this spot. So what do I want to do here? Do I want to like sit here and like, or do I want to keep walking or what? Like, how do I want this to go? Because it's mine and only mine.
Yes. Ephemeral is defined as lasting for a very short time. So yeah, I think you nailed it. All right.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think one of the beauties of camping for me, which it sounds like you just totally described, is the self-reliance portion. At some point very quickly on any hike by yourself, there's the realization, oh, if I don't source my own water, I'm going to die. At some point, maybe somebody will come by and save me. I don't know. It's not immediate, but like I have to take care of myself. And then that quickly builds into the pride of having taken care of yourself and really like owning your space and your feet and not relying on anybody else. I mean, it's interesting to me because it sounds like that's been your life too. You're a self-made man. You accomplished a lot in your life because you've chosen it. But it also occurs like there's a much deeper level of appreciation for that ownership of it because you put yourself in a situation where you had to be totally self-reliant for such a long period of time. Right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's like, somebody who oftentimes gets, chastised, especially like as I was a leader at Landmark, like it was not chastised, but it's just always like you need to be responsible that you have a huge ego. And I do. But the other part of it is like there's the flip end of that coin, which is that falling in love with like nobody got you there but you.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, other people have contributed, but at the end of the day, who drove your ass there? You did. And like,
Yeah.
Who signed your hut for that? Like, there's all these things that like, I think you can't have the dark without the light. So it's like, I'm not going to say that like I did it all myself. Like, my partner took care of my dog and like our dogs and like our house and all this other stuff. But like, who got me over those hills? Me. I did that. And I can be in love with that and also not an egomaniac about it. But it's like, it's finding that line that's like, it was like in order, I think like my egotism and like all of that was really stemming from the fact that I was always in denial of my own abilities. Mm-hmm. So it's like you're making up for and doing this. So it's like flip flopping back and forth. And like to find
you're always in denial of your own abilities.
Well, it's like you think you're a piece of shit. So then you go so much further to be the greatest.
Yes.
But it's like you'll never believe that like that this and that. And it's like you can't believe that you did it all alone. You can't pretend like you did it all alone, but then like you can't also say that anybody else was inside your head saying like you need to get up now and go hike over that mountain. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
So it's like finding the middle of it, like to be. It's like I just invented being centered. You know what I'm saying? Like. This concept of like I just invented this concept. It's called finding your center.
Good job, Buddha.
That's really what it is all about. But it was like discovering it for myself.
Yeah, which is the only way to learn anything is to discover it for yourself. I mean, unfortunately, I wish people could just tell me things and then I'd just be like, oh, I get it. But no, you have to discover. If I don't discover for myself, forget it. And I don't know about you, I'm super stubborn. So there's that. Yep. What I think is really fascinating about what you're describing is like for me, arrogance is always such an interesting thing because confidence is so revered and respected and arrogance is so annoying. And pride is a double-edged sword, right? Pride can be a terrible sin. Right. It can also be something really beautiful where you really like are owning and being proud of things without being a jerk about it. And for me, arrogance is always like actual arrogance, which I don't personally think you're arrogant. I think you're confident. Arrogance to me is always like covering up for these insecurities that are just under the surface. All the things that you think that where you, I mean, you were talking about it, you know, where I think I'm such a piece of shit. So I have to overexert myself in order to prove the voices in my head wrong, you know, but even though, and because they're voices in my head, I'm never actually going to prove them wrong because they're always just going to be barking in the background. You know, I think there's something really beautiful about what you're communicating where you just really owned your center and accepted yourself for who you are. And for the record, I don't think that's arrogance. I think that's pride in a beautiful way. And that's confidence in the right way.
Well,
just in case you needed my validation. Okay.
Well, Jeff says I'm not arrogant.
That's right. That's right. I'll stand by it. Great. So I wanted to ask you, like, I guess a two-part question, and maybe they're related. One is I want to know what your toughest challenges were, whether there was like, you know, you had to wrestle a bear, which that'd be a great story. You could make it up if you want.
It would be. I met somebody that did, but it's not my story to tell.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Let's not tell their story. And who knows how much of a story it was. But so like, what were your toughest challenges on the trail? And then if there's a specific example, something that really like happened where you're just like, wow, I can't believe I made it through that. And, or like, also like, you know, if there's a, you know, you mentioned that you really processed a lot of trauma in the top of the show here. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share kind of what the worst trauma that you had to deal with, or like, you know, kind of a specific taste of something that came up for you that was like, whoa, that guy.
So physical challenges, I did not get attacked by a bear. I did meet somebody. His name's Larry Boy. You can find him in the podcast world. He physically was attacked by a grizzly bear on a different trail and showed me his gnarly scars. I didn't have to deal with that. What I dealt with physically, which was like, from my perspective, wasn't that bad, but it's because it was my perspective. So my trail name, you get a trail name, which is like a summer camp kind of thing, like it's cute, and there's like a little bit of anonymity on the trail, but my trail name is Ducky, and it's because I have very wide, flat feet, and they are not made for doing hiking. Like I always get blisters on day hikes. I always get blisters if I'm on my feet for a long time, and what I dealt with on the trail was probably, so in 2,653 miles, I probably had open sores on my feet for 1,800 miles, some kind of a blister or many blisters or open wounds or something that needed some kind of attention on my feet, meaning that for like, it's estimated that the Pacific Crest Trail is 5,400,000 steps. So for 3/5, 4/5 of that, I was in a lot of pain.
Wow.
And I did it. And so it's like, what's funny is that like people don't believe me, you know, It's like, especially people that were hiking with me, they're like, oh, you have blisters. And I'm like, look at my feet. And they're like, holy shit. Like, are you okay? Like, how are you doing that? And then, you know, my hiking partner, my buddy Grayson, would be like in a bad mood. And like, I was like, what's wrong? And he's like, I have a blister. And I was like, oh, your little blisters. Show me your blister. And it's like tiny, tiny. And I was like, you have no idea. Like, so it's like, and I knew about this about myself, that I have grit and determination. I can get through shit. But like, it's weird to think about, like, yeah, I was in physical discomfort every single step for a large portion of it. And when it went away, and it did go away at the very end, so I got to do, you know, 800 miles without any physical pain in my feet. It was amazing. And I was like, is this what hiking is for everyone else? Like, wow. But like, no knee or any other kind of injuries, but that's like a long, like, my feet finally figured it out. But like, holy crap, like, there were days when I was shocked that I was able to get through it, because every single step was like knives. Like, okay, I can do this. And there were definitely days when I was on trail, especially in the morning. So you put your shoes on, you're like, oh God, this is going to suck, until your feet essentially go numb.
Right.
But like, just tears streaming from my, like, wow. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Like, it's like they're going to go numb. I don't know if it's now. I mean, but I was trying not to take any like painkillers, just because I was like really nervous about like at the beginning I was taking so much Advil, like just to like deal with it. And I can't believe that I actually was physically in that much discomfort, and then but traveled 1,800 miles like that with a backpack on in the
Yeah.
heat, going uphill. you know,
What was it that cured the feet? Was it just the
it
amount
was
of hiking?
finding the magic Goldilocks combination of like, because if it was always like one thing after the other. So it was like first like your feet grow on the trail. So I normally wear a 10. I was wearing size 12s like within, I don't know, probably a couple hundred miles. I had like got new shoes.
Wow.
And then it was finding the right sock for my feet. I have really, really hot feet. So like there's like a double sock combination that a lot of people do. It's like an Injinji, which is a toe sock liner that goes into a wool darn tough, making my feet way too hot. So like on anytime we would press past like 18 miles, I know like I'm gonna fuck up my feet somehow today, and then I'd take off my shoes and be like, "Yep, I have a blister on the ball of my foot that is gonna hurt now for probably 2 weeks until that thing heals, and then it'd be something else." Or like we'd get our like I'd have to walk through a river or something, and I was like, "Nope, I'm gonna get a blister because." But yep, I'd get a. There was a time when I had a blister that was on 40% of one of my feet, like the whole bottom of my foot was like. I took off my sock and it was like a pillowy waterbed, and I was like, this is so bad. Like you like go to
Wow.
drain it and then it's instantly stingy, but it went away, and now like my feet feel great.
Hmm.
And I'm not hiking anymore.
Yeah, you got the
Um,
right. So was there? What was
yeah,
the sock? What was this? What was the secret sock thing? What was the secret
it's
sock recipe for it?
Injinji has a midweight trail sock that
Okay.
tends to get holes in it, so like you're actively trying to replace them as you're going, and they're not sold everywhere, so you got to be kind of have things shipped to you, like to the local post office and all that. But finding the right sock for me, it was this sock, and I suffered the consequences and paid a lot of money in socks because they do get holes in them relatively quickly. But you're also like, it's just a lot of wear and tear on your feet.
Just sounds hilarious that you're spending a lot of money on socks,
Hundreds of dollars
but
on
it makes
socks.
sense if all you're doing is
Yeah.
walking.
Yep.
Okay, great. And then so that's great. So that sounds really excruciating, and I'm sure there was something a lot that you got out of that too, because it's such a. I mean, it's such a I'm going to use the word masochistic, but not really intentional, even though you could have quit, which you didn't, right? So you kept going despite the fact that it was painful, There's almost like
Yeah.
a self-flagellation quality to it where you know that you're going to have to deal with this every day. And so then that probably also, it sort of reminds me of like the story of the Buddha. He went through all these intentional tortures where he would like surround himself with fires that were fully lit and then meditate and not eat for a week at a time and like that, in order to achieve enlightenment. Obviously this is different, and it was just sort of part of the equation for you that you were going to have these blisters, but you did press on regardless.
There were 2 days when it got to be so bad that I was like, I have to stop and take a day off. There's no way I'm going to go any further. And now that was one moment when I leveled up in my wisdom, when I was like, I'm not hiking my own hike. I was like trying to meet somebody else's schedule, and I was like, I don't have to go anywhere. And so I'm not going, I'm not doing it. And I like used the lifeline. I called my sister. My sister Tani came and picked me up and like took me, and we got a burger. And I was just like, I just need to not be on my feet today. And I ended up meeting other hikers, and I was like, yeah, I had a meltdown. And like these sweet girls that were like, tell us about your meltdown. Like we all have them. And I was like, I went from being so alone and feeling like, oh, I'm like such a loser. Like I can't even do this. Like my feet won't, like I'm not cut out to do this, to like just being like, yeah, this is part of the hike. This is,
Yeah.
like you're like, okay, you hit a roadblock, and now it's who are you going to be in the face of that? They do say you never quit on a bad day. And the next day that I went hiking, I ended up getting to go swim in Crater Lake. It was
Oh, wow.
a wonderful, perfect day. And I never would have gotten to experience that had I not just like like blew the whistle and was like, I'm done. I'm out today. I'm not doing anymore. This is
Beautiful.
what I need. Take care of yourself. And I was like, and I think that most of us don't do that. Like have the wherewithal of like, I don't have to be doing any of this. And it was like literally I had to choose, like, am I going to hike or not? And I was like, well, let's not make that decision until tomorrow and just kind of sit on it and let this heal. And I was like, no, I'm ready. I want to keep going.
Yeah. Amazing. That's amazing. Side note, Crater Lake, is that the Northern California one that's near Downeyville? Because I went there.
Crater Lake this one's in Washington. So it's
Okay.
the deepest, bluest lake. It is. And I got to go swimming in it. It was awesome. So awesome. Wow. There's a Wizard Island. I was really into that.
Cool.
It's like this big cone island in the middle of it. It looks very video game-esque. It's cool.
Yeah, right on. Nice. All right, great. So then that's an amazing story that you overcame. And what about trauma-wise? Was there anything particular that was just like, oh my God, this has been haunting me my whole life, and now I'm getting through it, that you might like to share, that you're comfortable sharing?
So I don't think that I had any like breakthroughs in terms of like unprocessed trauma. There are the things that's like, as I said before, like I was a landmark junkie for almost a decade. So like like everything that I've dealt with has come up. I did get to I got some like insane perspective though on like my own transformation. So one of the biggest heroes in my hike was my dad. And this is a more recent thing because I just finished, but so historically my dad and I did not get along. Like my dad was career Navy. He was barely home when I was growing up. And when he would come home, he was just an asshole, like just short with me, like didn't understand me. Also, like was a fruity little kid. Like I like loved unicorns and my favorite color was rainbow. Like, like he's a Navy guy and like didn't really get it.
Yeah.
And I had transformed my relationship with my dad in the Landmark Forum. That was like one big thing that I got of like the initial course was that I got that like when I was in the second grade, my dad and I had like, I don't want to do this like quickly. So I knew that my dad was an asshole all through growing up. Like, and I had an enormous mountain of evidence. Like he never let me do anything that I wanted to do. He was always like a no for the things that like I wanted, like, and he just was always, I had it that he was standing in my way. And it was because he didn't love me or understand me. And in the Landmark Forum, I got that, that this thing had happened in the second grade where my dad was judging the Pinewood Derby, and like it was a photo finish with like me and this like guy, and he gave the trophy to this other kid. And I remember like he pulled me down. And he was like, I was really upset about it, and he's like, Nathan, I want you to understand that I think you won, but I couldn't give you the trophy because it would look like we're cheating. I'm your dad, so I can't give it to you. And I remember in that moment going, you don't love me. If you did, you'd let me have this. Like it's mine. Like that's not fair. That is a big piece of my personality. That is a chiming thing. Like that's not fair. This shouldn't be this way. But, I mean, the mark of being a human, yes. But my dad and I just did not have a relationship from that point forward. Like anytime he ever did anything that looked like parenting, it was like, it is not your business. If that's not fair, you don't love me. Don't tell me I should take Spanish. I want to take French. And I didn't listen to him.
From like 8 years old on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Until I took the Landmark Forum when I was 31. And I really got that my dad was trying to parent me and I was standing in the way of that. I stood in the way of our relationship. And, I cleaned it up. And since then, my dad and I, like, we built a house together. We took a cruise together. Like he regularly will call me and tell me how cool he thinks it is that we're friends. And he's like, he loves me. He's like in tears and all this. And as I'm coming down the mountain, because my dad's going to come pick me up, like he picked me and my two hiker friends up at the very end of the trail. He was like insistent that he's doing this. I'm like, I probably have a half mile, and I just got present to like my dad is picking me up from my hike. This is somebody who never went to a swim meet, never like went to band concerts, never supported me, never did, because I was like, didn't let it happen. I was like, fuck you, you don't love me. And so he was never invited to anything.
Wow, he wasn't invited.
And my
Wow.
dad is like celebrating the completion of this humongous, momentous thing that I just did in this accomplishment. And he was like, I want to be there. And he brought champagne, and like, it was just like, I just remember walking down the mountain, and I was just like sobbing, like, my fucking dad's picking me up.
Wow.
That like never would have happened
Yeah.
had I not, put myself through the work and all this. But I was just like, it was so it wasn't trauma that I worked through, but it was like, I got to celebrate something in a way that like never would have happened had, I not wanted more out of my own life from my own perspective. So not a trauma that I got to work through, but it's like, as far as like a triumph over the past, like I set a higher bar for very much.
That's beautiful. That's so great. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I'm totally pro dad. So I think that's really great. And I also had a similar kind of which I've shared on this podcast before about my relationship with my dad, but he just passed away. So I am also very sensitive to how special that is, that you've got your dad in your corner. Good job.
Thanks.
Were there any, like, I'm curious about if there were any like spiritual breakthroughs for you, or if you felt like a deeper connection to source or what have you from all this time in nature?
So my sister refers to this time in my life. So like, I saw her, so she lives in Shasta. She's very like,
Oh yeah.
And she's very spiritual, and I'm somebody who, I am very spiritual as well, and also you would never know it because I'm so snarky, and like I don't believe it and whatever, but I'm fully into witchcraft and like all of, like, I do believe in all of it. And
positive witchcraft, people, not black witchcraft. He's not sacrificing animals. All right, don't get
how do
crazy.
you know? How do you know?
Oh, thanks, Nathan. That's great.
I just think it's like, but I'm somebody who, I have a reverence for nature, and my sister though is like, like so much more than that. But she refers to this time in my life as the summer that I learned to paint with all the colors in the wind. It's like, and when she picked me up, because I saw her in Shasta, she was like, "You're so different." I was like, I don't think I'm that different. And who did you think I was before? Because everybody thinks I'm like the LA, like I'm from a really small witchy town, and like, because I live in Los Angeles and I work in the film industry, and like I'm supposedly a certain way, and I never thought that. But I went through a lot of the hike not having any like moved to tears moments, because it was just like, you're working really hard, and I've seen a lot of this stuff, and like I have a respect for nature and all this, but there's a wilderness area in Washington State called the Goat Rocks National Wilderness. And you're hiking through normal stuff, and Washington gets really craggy, so they're hard. You're working really hard to get through this terrain, but you enter it, and it's immediately like, you just go over this little hill, and you're just like, whoa, like this is different. All of a sudden, I'm in like river run, like it's like just there's waterfalls and all this stuff, and you're like, okay, crazy, like I was not expecting this. I didn't do any research on this area. And then you are making your way through the wilderness. And so we're going up in the morning. I'm going up by myself because I'm just hiking by myself. And as I'm getting higher and higher, I can see Mount Adam, like I think it's Adams or Jefferson behind me. And it's kind of coming out of the fog. And you like keep hiking. And then all of a sudden you can see Mount St. Helens. And she's peeking out of the fog. And I'm like, wow, this is really pretty. And like every quarter of a mile, every several hundred feet, I'm turning around and taking photos. But like, you're going up a hill, up a mountain, so like I'm turning around to like take in the view. And you get to the crest of it, and just I get hit in the face with Mount Rainier, that is like even bigger than all the other two. But like, you can see all three, and I just broke into like, not tears, like hysterics. Like fully just like sobbing, and just like present to like, this is the hike. Like, this is why I'm doing it. And it like everything that I had gone through, because this is like at mile, I don't know, 1900 or something like that. Like you're like, no, it's even further than that. I think it's 2100. Like you worked your ass off to get there. And I was just like so present to like how like privileged I am to be like able to do this, like physically, mentally, financially, support wise, like it all just like flooded into me. And I was just like, holy shit, like under no other circumstance would I have been able to like have gone through everything that I've gone through and then like get rewarded with this in the morning with like this just like blanket of clouds and these three huge peaks and just like on a perfect day. And I was just like blown away. And I was like, wow. Like, and I just like sat up there like crying my eyes out for probably like a half an hour. It was like such a release because I'm not somebody who cries often. Like I get teared up, but it was like, this was hard crying. I was just like blown away at like the majesty of, and like just felt so in tune because like you're on top of a mountain, but you're looking at like three other peaks. And like, it was just, I felt so just thankful like to be able to have done this and to like to be connected and in a way. And I shared this on my Instagram, so you see like the remnants of like me kind of pulling it together and like trying to like say thank you. But it was just like such a moment. Like it kind of happened if you were like I was able to be at the very top of Mount Whitney by myself at sunrise for about a half an hour. Was the first one up there, and like I saw the sun crest over, and I had my moment, but it was not like the gut punch of like cosmic connection that I got in Goat Rocks. I was just like blown away. Wow. I was like, oh, I'm so glad awesome. That happened to me. Because a lot of people I feel like don't get that. They're like, we're all searching for that feeling and the release and like, you know, the epiphany. But it was just like, I got bowled over. It was awesome.
That's great. Was there any like, do you have any, is there any like kind of takeaway from that you glean?
I think it was so I'm like up there and you have to return to earth, you know, like you have to like, okay, I have to now go back into society because I was up there and I was alone. And so I was like, all right, so I'm going to leave this here and take with it what I'm taking. But it was like, it's like, I know that that's there. And so the perspective and like the dissonance between what's going on in the House of Representatives right now, or like what's going on across the world, like it's all like these are human problems, and it gave me faith that it doesn't have to be like this, the way that we are in this news cycle with all this. I'm like, I don't think that what we're doing with our time on Earth was the intention. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's a possible outcome when we fight about land and when we fight about like power, but these mountains give no fucks, and they're going to be there like long after we blow ourselves up. So it's just like, I got to I leveled up. I got to be up there with like the cosmic masters, and like, well, it was fun for me to visit, and I'm going to go back into the mass. But I know you're here and I can visit again, you know. But Beautiful. It was definitely like I was just like I was above it. I was literally in the clouds. It's like,
yeah, amazing.
Here.
That's so beautiful. That's great. Awesome. How many Yetis did you see on the trip?
I saw none. How many Yeti fanatics?
You saw a lot of them.
And
listen, I bet you saw 18,000 Yetis. You don't want to tell us about it, but I'm asking you right now. Where is the fucking Yeti holdup? All right. Where's their fucking secret cave? All right. Is it by Goat Rocks? I bet it's under the Goat Rocks. Clearly.
No, you got to go to Wrightwood, where I met a conspiracy confirmist, is what he said. I forgot, but yeah, he was drunk off his ass. There's a lot of people looking for Yetis out there.
Really? Okay, good.
Jefferson is real and rich, and they all belong to that.
What is it?
The state of Jefferson.
Oh yeah, that's where I live.
I know. Yeah, no, that's for real. That you're with your people, your tribe.
Look, for the record, I'm not a state of
I
Jefferson
know.
proponent, but anyway, I've
You're
heard of it. But it
gentrifying the
is like
state of
Nevada
Jefferson.
County. It is exactly where I live.
Oh yeah, no, and they
So
definitely
so wait, so
believe
you met a bunch
in
of people
Yetis.
from this area who were looking for Yetis?
Well, you walk right through it. So like you're in the state of Jefferson, or like what will be once they do secede from the nation and get their own control over the land. But they're like
Uh,
the state of Jefferson and can can I don't know, like confirmed believers in Yetis and like Bigfoot like theorists and all that. Like it's all one and the same to me.
yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, no, I didn't see
Interesting.
I saw I lie. I saw one bear, and I was on a boat when I saw it. But no, I didn't see a lot. I didn't see a lot of nature, and I maybe it's I'm like just like a noisy hiker. I saw like an owl one time. That was cool. And I was like, I spent 100 and something days in the woods, and I barely saw anything. Saw no
Hmm.
mountain lions. I saw some poop and lots of
Okay.
snakes.
Werewolves?
No,
You didn't see any
I heard
werewolves.
coyotes killing something one time. But
That's
yeah, there was
scary.
like not a lot of nature. Maybe I'm just super noisy or smellier. I don't know. They just like steer clear of me.
It was your feet. They were scared of
I
your
think it
feet.
was. They just like this
They're
kid's
like, that
rotting.
guy's good. Don't even fucking. He's got gangrene. All right, watch out. The
Yeah,
feet, fucking
almost.
gross. All right, we're all gonna die if we eat
Yeah,
that guy. It's gonna be bad
yeah.
for the whole
What do you
fucking
want?
platoon. Uh,
That's right.
that's what werewolves. They travel in platoons. In
They
case
say
anybody's wondering,
platoons. Yeah,
it's like a murder of crows. It's a
Mhm.
platoon of werewolves. Everybody knows
That's
that.
right.
Um,
Hmm.
Beautiful. All right, great. So, is there anything that you would want to impart on people, either related to the journey that you took, and or just like your own kind of personal perspective that you wanna leave people with? Something we haven't covered.
I don't know if it's like that we haven't covered it, but I will say this is that in my travels and in my interaction with other people, a lot of people have said like, "Wow, that's amazing. I would love to do something like that someday." I'm like, "Okay, so when are you gonna go do that?" And they're like, "Oh, I can never. I can never." And it's literally the only way that I made this possible is that I switched one thing. I said, "I want to do that" versus "I am going to do that." And I set a date. I set it by when, and then it was like the future I'm living into gives me who I'm being right now. And it was like, okay, well then it was like it informed that small shift in language shifted everything for
Hmm.
me from like who I was at work, how I negotiated deals, what are my Google searches, like what does my YouTube feed look like? It was like it went from whatever I was in woodworking to backpacking. And then it became, I was just like fed into this obsession. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, well, I got to save money. And then I was like, all of a sudden I learned I'm a person that can save money. All of a sudden I'm somebody who can ask for enormous, like, I can not be available for something and then, but still get hired later. Like there were huge shifts in who I was on the planet as a result of that very insignificant shift in language.
Hmm.
But it was the
Yeah.
thing that made all the difference. Not I want to, I am going to
Yeah.
set a date.
Yeah. Beautiful. That's amazing. That's great. And I would also just sort of on that note, just to kind of dovetail there, for anybody who hasn't experienced, really being in nature by yourself, just look at taking a couple of day hike, or I mean, like doing some backpacking just by yourself out in the woods. I know for me, that's been super, like, I'm just starting to get back
Yeah,
into it again,
well
but
with
it's
that
like
is I
so
mean it has
rejuvenating.
this but it does have this huge barrier of like everyone's always like, did you have a gun? Did you like no,
Right. You don't
nothing
need a
scary
gun.
happened to me. Like there was definitely no guns. Like it
No.
wasn't I wouldn't say it was necessarily hard to do. It just took a long time. Like I was walking a lot. My body got in shape and all this, but there was nothing scary about it. There was like once you're out there, it just becomes like a new reality of like, oh,
Yeah.
I sleep in a tent every night. I slept better. My watch that I wear like tracks my sleeping. I sleep
Hmm.
better. I get a sleep score of 100. And I'm like, and they're like, weren't there
Wow.
bears? No, I didn't see any bears. Go camping. Go outside. Great.
Yeah, get outside, people. All right, do it. And if you die out there, don't sue us. I mean, you'll be dead, so it won't matter. All right, but
that's right.
Really, nature is the way. Awesome. All right, I asked this question of all my guests, Nathan. For you, what is sacred and what is insane?
So my sacred and insane is going to go. I'm going to do it in the opposite order.
Do it.
Because what's insane, for myself is just how much time and effort I spend daily on caring about what other people think about me. Like, and even like the arrogance of thinking that people are even interested in me. Like, even as we're recording this, I keep looking down at myself. Like, do I look cool?
Yeah.
It's insane. Like the amount of processing that gets done, and it's probably a lot of it that's happening in the background. It's just sort of like taking up space and like processing speed, because it's just always a concern of mine. And it's insane to me that like that is a thing. And I actually had a moment of this. I was in Zion on a different backpacking trip, but I had like gone canyoning with so you're going through this slot canyon, and then we had to go like 2 miles out to get to the road, and we're doing like scrambling on these giant boulders. And I was just marveling at the human, like my ability to like navigate spaces, and like how much like microprocessing that's happening of like, this is this distance to me and whatever, because like I would slip and then catch myself like Spider-Man and be like, how the fuck did I just do that? Like, it was insane. Like my body caught itself. And it's because all of this like is firing in the background to keep me alive. And then I was at camp later, and I'm still doing it, and I'm still noticing it happening. But it's like I say something and that person smiles, or like I said something down and like, or like just all this navigating and whatever that's happening. It's like unused. Like, it's working when I'm driving, but like has no place when I'm sitting there eating spaghetti with friends. But it's still happening. These like the microtransactions that are just like taking up like an enormous amount of like RAM, I guess, or like processing speed inside my computer brain. And that to me is insane. Like, it just really is. Like, I wish that there was a redirect to like turn that off. Like, there's no threat here. Like, you don't need to be doing any of that, like, at all. Like, you can use that energy for good versus whatever it's doing, all the time. Just, still working, still firing, but doesn't need to be happening. That's insane to me.
Yeah.
And what's sacred, I think, is the quiet that happens when you're connected to someone. Like in a conversation, when like all that noise like actually becomes noise, or maybe even you're lucky enough to turn it off. Like, to be like wholly present, and like that connection that happens when like your brain doesn't need to be working that hard and you're just in the moment. And I think that like it's something that like we try to capture like time and time again. It's like why people, in parties, like it's a moment of it. Like when it's like, I'm just not doing it. I think I had that at the top of the mountain, and Goat Rocks, like where it's just like it shut off. And like the peace of like not having that rattling around is, to me, is sacred. And I think that it happens when you're connected.
Yeah. Beautiful.
It's like silence.
Beautiful. Yeah. Silence. I like it. Awesome. That's great. That's a great answer. Well, listen, it's been super great having you on the program. It's been really great exploring the Pacific Crest Trail with you. Yes. Congratulations. We're super glad to have you back.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming on the show, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor and weird to be on a computer.
Indeed. All right, great. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. I am Jeff Fado. Lunacy is my creation, and I will see you next week. Much love.